My soldier Henry Albert Stevens was very important to both the war and the town of Weston. Henry was born on September 27, 1830 in Temple Hillsboro, New Hampshire. He was named after his father, Henry Stevens, who was also my second soldier. On May 27, 1861, he enlisted for the war. About a month later, on June 20th, 1861, he was mustered in. He was placed into the 2nd Vermont Infantry Company I, along with Carley's soldier Silas H. Pease. During the war, he was taken prisoner, but was released, and was soon paroled. He was disabled out of the war on July 11, 1862. He only fought in one battle, which was the Battle of Bull Run. There were 3 battles after that before he was disabled out of the war. His life in the war was very difficult because he was a sharpshooter. For the town of Weston, they only had about a dozen sharpshooters, and Henry was one of them. Bull Run was the first major land battle of the Civil War. During the battle, 460 men were killed, along with 1,124 wounded. The First Battle of Bull Run was the largest and bloodiest war up to 1861. After the war in 1876, Henry met Teresa Amir in Baltimore, Maryland, and he got married at 40 years old, and she was 20 years old. They soon had their first child that year in 1876, and had 10 more children in the course of 26 years. They had their 10th child, Augustus, in 1898, and then 2 years later moved to the town of Weston in 1900. By the time this census was taken, their 4 older children, Mary, James, John, and Charles, had already moved out of the house. 2 years later, they had their final child, Rosie, in 1902. His life at home must have been very chaotic because they had so many children. They never had all the children living in the house at once, but they did have 5 or 6 children living there at once. Teresa had no record of an occupation, but on the 1900 census document, it shows that Henry is a farmer, even though he is 70 years old. 6 years later, on November 1st, 1908, Henry died in Mount Tabor, Vermont. There was no death record on how he died. 20 years later, in 1928, Teresa died from organic heart disease with only a 10-minute sudden death. Today, Henry and Teresa share a gravestone at Maple Grove Cemetery in Weston, Vermont.